Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we've got more ridiculousness with PEDs, WTF Bears, and Mother Nature hating Chicago baseball. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The Ice Hogs are in the playoffs right now. In the playoffs. So head on over to icehogs.com. Get yourself hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. See them during the most exciting time of the year. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, my friend, how was it to have a weekend with no holidays?
Oh, it was kind of boring, but there were still some exciting things about it, I guess.
We will talk about exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking we get a couple of housekeeping things with the Bulls and the Blackhawks and some Bears things out of the way before we talk baseball. You okay with that?
Yeah, that sounds perfect, actually.
So basketball and hockey, all I really want to say is 2 weeks from yesterday, so the April 28th is going to be the NHL draft lottery. So that's the night when we'll know what pick the Blackhawks have, and then we can start with our how we get better talks. And I'm going to try to get a guest on to chat with us. So we'll see how that goes. And then the NHL draft will be June 22nd and 23rd in Dallas, Texas. Odd place to have it, but that's where it will be. And then the NBA, the draft lottery will be May 15th. And the NBA draft will be the night before the NHL draft. So you'll have the 21st will be NBA draft, and the 22nd, 23rd will be the NHL draft. So 3 straight nights of our teams picking early. Hopefully very early.
And this is a big year for Chicago in that kind of term because like you said, they're both picking early. One is trying to fully rebuild. The other is kind of trying to retool, but also get something of value early on. So it's going to be an interesting few days.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be turning point for both franchises. With the Bulls, you're expecting it to be the turn trending upward. They've talked glowingly about the Larry Markkinen and Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine, and they've got the money to be able to add a free agent if they feel that that's the right time. They're going to be adding a top 10 pick, and so you feel like that's on the rise team. But the Blackhawks are on an odd point where they just a couple years ago were on cloud 9. I've had a couple of down seasons. It's a very down season this year. And with a lot of the young talent that they have, I think we are hoping with a nice draft pick and little money to spend that this can be back on an upward trend.
Yeah, definitely. There are obviously some big holes to fill. You got to make sure Corey Crawford is 100%. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing. Next is you got to find out who the heck is going to play behind him. That's probably going to have to be a free agent signing of some sort. I think we talked about that earlier. And yeah, you need to bulk up that defense. And I'm sure that a defender is going to be someone Stan Bowman is going to be looking, depending on where he drafts. Now, if they somehow get incredibly lucky and get the first overall pick, which I doubt is going to happen. We all know Rasmus Dahlin, stud defenseman, is going to be the guy to draft first overall. He is the prized guy in this draft. But, again, I'm not putting my money on that. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right about the Hawks. They're trying, they've said it. They're trying to retool this thing and get right back to it. They're retaining Bowman. They're retaining Q. They have no intentions of, some sort of mass sell-off or rebuild. They're trying to go right back into it this next coming year.
Yeah, and you're right. Everything hinges on the expectation that Corey Crawford is back and Corey Crawford is healthy. Because if he's not, this is just an exercise in spinning your wheels, because they've got some talent there, but it's not anywhere near good enough to mask JF Berube or Jeff Glass or Colin Delia or Forsberg. It's not good enough to mask those guys.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say I had high hopes for him, but I think it's safe to say that I can't really trust Forsberg. I figure that this was his year to really prove it, and unfortunately it didn't look all that great. When we got him in the trade, I thought it was a good deal because I'm like, hey, we're getting a young goaltender here. We need someone to back up Crawford. I just don't see him flipping a switch and being really reliable in the future. I don't know. Maybe there is a small chance, but I really don't see it.
I don't either. I mean, I know that most of these goalies are still fairly young, but at some point you are who you are, and you're not going to change that. And you can utilize some of these guys in spot situations where you don't want Crawford playing, so many consecutive games, or if he has a minor injury, and you can sort of mask those things, like they masked having a 36-year-old accountant in goal. But when it's night in, night out, it's impossible to mask some of those deficiencies. And at some point, like I said, these guys are who they are.
Exactly. So you want to go out and find someone reliable. Corey Crawford, they say he's going to be back. So there's a list of some guys on the market, some goaltenders on the market, veteran guys that can still have some value to them. So it's probably where they're going to explore. Like I said, we've talked about that earlier, but I don't really see any other way they're going to replace it. There's nobody in the pipeline now, and even if you draft someone this year, it's not like they're going to be NHL ready.
Yeah, and if I read this correctly, JF Berube is not even on the Rockford playoff squad.
So it's Colin Delia, right?
Yeah, and Jeff Glass.
And Jeff Glass. That Chicago Wolves Rockford series is going to be a real good one. It's just too bad that the first round is only 5 games.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. I'm going to try, depending on work schedule and family stuff, I'm going to try to go to at least one game in each place.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get to one at the All-State, if any, that Thursday night. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it, but I'm going to definitely try. I think it's going to be a really fun series.
And I know you saw some of the pictures on Twitter. I didn't post that many of them, but during the exciting game of the weekend, which we'll talk about in a bit, I missed all of it because my friend's son had his 3rd birthday party, and it was at the Blackhawks training facility. So we got to go out on the ice, and then we got to go on a tour of the locker room and see Quenneville's office and their workout facility. And we got to go in the locker room, and like they still had all of their stuff in the lockers. So in the bathroom, there's like a thing on the wall where they all put their razors, and it's got like a spot for each of their names. They've got their shoes with the practice stuff, and when you actually go into the locker room, it has their game jerseys, and it's funny. Everybody's got their game jerseys except for man, man, who was it now? One player had a practice jersey in there, and I was like, oh, B team, B team. But but yeah, my friend and his wife and his son, they did professional pictures taken in front of was it Crawford or Seabrook's locker, and I was looking at it, I was like, hey, wait a minute, there's the jock strap hanging in the background.
Oh God.
So so that was funny, but yeah, it was a neat experience. And yeah, they've got this like room where they just kind of chill out, and it's just got a bunch of big cushy couches and then 3 big screen TVs mounted on the wall so they can play video games.
Oh, that's cool. And that's the new facility, right? The one they just opened?
Yeah, it's the brand new one. And it's funny, apparently Quinville asked to have his office the door right before you go into the locker room, because he wanted to take inventory of who went in, who went out, and what times.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So it was a neat experience. I'll post more pictures on Twitter.
Yeah, please do.
And on Facebook. Yeah, it was, they have like these things on the wall where it's like all the different trophies that they give out, like Lady Bang and the Calder. I mean, that's called the Calder. Oh my God, I'm having an old man moment. Just woke up from a nap a little bit
ago. Like the Hart Trophy, the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yeah, all the trophies, and every Blackhawk who's ever won it in the year are like etched into this like, glass thing mounted on the wall, and it's got a picture of each of the trophies. It was really neat. And they had pictures from each of the championship seasons, like the team photo. It had some really old photos from like the 40s of the players walking out of the walking in front of the Wirtz Corporation building. So it was really neat, and they had a lot of cool stuff.
That is cool. I got to tell you, it feels so empty right now without Blackhawks playoff hockey. You see the other hockey teams that are playing in the playoffs, and you know that you've been so spoiled the past decade, but yeah, man, you still miss it.
I haven't watched any of the Pittsburgh Flyers series, but are any of those games going to be close? I think it's 3 for 3 with blowouts. Yeah. I just keep seeing the scores, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And if you listen to the show for a while, you know that I lived in Philadelphia for a long time. So I have a lot of friends that are Flyers fans, and just by the Facebook reactions, it's either they're on cloud 9 or they're in the gutter. It's one game that's like, this team's terrible, I feel miserable. And the next team is like, we're the best city in the world, and everybody else sucks.
Fly, Eagles,
the next day it's like, our hockey team is dominant and we won the Super Bowl. Philly.
Oh, that's funny. That is too good. I mean, I do kind of hope the Flyers win this series because I'm tired of the Penguins, but that's really funny.
I would normally say I always root for a Philadelphia team to lose, but you're right. Because there's 0% chance that the Flyers are good enough to go to Stanley Cup Finals. Oh, no. So I would like to see them knock out Pittsburgh and then just get smoked the next series. That's my hope. So get all those Pennsylvania teams out.
Yeah. The question early on, who do you think is the favorite to win the Cup? Who would you say is the favorite?
Nashville?
Yeah, I'd say so as well. I can't see anyone beating them in a 7-game series. I just can't.
Yeah, I'm going through, and I'm including regular season. If you look at the sprint to the finish line and then the first couple games of the playoffs so far, and they look good. There's really not a lot of flaws in that game.
No, I mean, they've given up more goals than I thought they would, but still, their team is so lethal that they'll just skate right around that and erase any deficit they have. I got to give the Avalanche credit because I thought the games are going to be a lot worse. At least they've stayed with them for a little bit, but once the Predators really kick it into gear, it's really hard to see anyone stopping them. I think the team that can come the closest to stopping them would be Vegas if they move on. But, Vegas may be up 2-0, but you can never count the Kings out. You just can't.
Yeah, and I can't even think of who. I think the conference finals. I'm hoping for Golden Knights versus Nashville because I think that'll be a good one. But I have no idea who's going to come out of the other conference. Bruins, maybe?
Yeah, I could see the Bruins. I could see the Penguins. I can just never pick the Capitals anymore because they're probably just going to choke. So I can't really see them at this point.
I mean, the Lightning are playing well. That's a possibility.
That's true. Yeah, I keep forgetting about them because they were quietly one of the best teams in hockey this year. But yeah, like right now, the Bruins, the Penguins would probably be my top two out of the East.
So yeah, we'll talk more about that. It's pretty quiet time of the year if your team's not in the playoffs. So, like I said before, I'm going to hope to get a special guest on to talk hockey with us once we have the draft order set.
Sweet.
And if you're all right with it, I'm going to try to get the guys from Ball on next week to talk.
Yes.
Bulls.
I was hoping you'd call those guys up again. I was just thinking the other day, we haven't talked to Ball since we did Peace Pizza.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to get them on next week and see what they're up to.
Awesome.
Because I need to know what's going on with Paul Zipser.
I don't know if you read in the Tribune today. They were giving their Bulls grades where they have, if he was good, it's the regular smiling bull logo. And if they were bad, the horns were facing down. And Paul Zipser was one of those horns facing down ones.
Yeah, I'm sure him and Jaren Grant. But
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to leave this for next week. Hopefully we have the guys from Ball, but I saw a quote from John Paxson about how excited they are and about having Cam Payne as their backup point guard next year. And I was like, man, they're already prepping the tank. They are prepping the tank for next year.
Well, even the Tribune, they gave him a horns up. And granted, Payne had some decent games, but I just felt like a lot of his points were it was like such garbage time that like, I don't know. There were times when he did play okay, but I'd give him, no Bull got the straight horns this year. You'd always give the straight horns. At the very least, I'd give Cam Payne the straight horns because there were some times he looked all right, but as a reliable backup,
no, you're okay. Maybe if he's your guy that's in the G League or whatever they're calling it now, and you bring him up if there's somebody injured or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
But as your backup, come on, you need somebody better for coming off your bench.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, a G League or like a third stringer, like is someone you could plug in every now and then, but I don't see him being anything more than that. And like I said, a lot of his playing time was just a lot of trash time. I give him credit though for, I think, didn't he have like a 20-point game or maybe several 20-point games where he actually looked pretty good? That's probably why he got a better grade than initially expected. But yeah, I mean, going forward, I don't know. Garpak seemed to love him. I don't know.
It's because of his dance moves. I
He's
think
got
if you're
great
giving
dance
him
moves, no doubt.
he does. I think if you're giving him a positive grade, it's going to be with a recency bias because you're right. Is once they put everybody on the injured reserve for the most part, that they were forced to play him, and he put up some decent numbers in garbage games and garbage time in games that they were trying to lose. So maybe they just only have a month-long memory, but yeah, he is not the guy that you want on your team going forward.
No, and I think that maybe some of the positivity came from the fact that I guess he was okay defensively. He wasn't terrible, but again, I don't know.
Let's move on to Bears. Mark Sanchez, although he's not officially a Bear, just got hit with a 4-game PED suspension. What the hell is that?
So I made a joke on Twitter saying, wow, he took PEDs while coaching Trubisky last year. And then Olin Kreutz quoted my tweet and said it was a good one. So I felt really proud. And Olin Kreutz is my guy. I think he might be my favorite Bears analyst, or at least one of my favorites.
Olin Kreutz I like him as an analyst and I liked him as a player, but I've heard some really awful stories about what a mean, horrible bully he was in the locker room. Hunter Hillenmeyer almost quit football because of how bad he was getting bullied by Olin Kreutz.
Now that I did not know.
I didn't either until Hunter Hillenmeyer talked about it, like after he'd retired. And who was it? Fred Miller, who was a lineman on, a teammate of Olin Kreutz. The two of them ended up getting in a fist fight, and Olin Kreutz broke his jaw.
Now that I didn't know either. I still love his analysis, but wow.
Oh yeah, as a player, loved him because I wasn't there behind the scenes, and as an analyst, I do love him too because he's not afraid to call people out and
he tells it as it is.
Doesn't sugarcoat things. But back to Mark Sanchez I find it really hard to believe that a guy who is absolutely just comfortable with being the third string guy who is going to help mentor young quarterbacks and knows that he's not playing unless there is an absolute disaster, that he's taking performance enhancing drugs knowingly. You can't tell me that.
Well, and
you can't tell me that.
He was shocked when he heard about it.
To be fair, everybody claims that they're shocked about it.
Well, yeah. But yeah.
So my thing is, like, the guy is making, what he made $2 million last year to hold a clipboard and clap and mentor.
It's a pretty sweet deal, if you ask me.
That is absolutely sweet gig. He's an absolute idiot if he's going to do something to jeopardize that, knowing he's never going to play and nobody's expecting him to play. And if the wheels come off the bus and he has to play, nobody is expecting anything from him. So it just kind of points to me that is it that the league's testing policy is flawed, where they're testing for things, or they're testing. So I'm a chemist by trade, and there are conformational tests that you can do to differentiate. So some things may come up with a false hit. Are they doing the conformational tests to make sure it is the actual substance rather than just a false positive? Are they the chain of custody of samples and the collection of said samples? Is it where it's supposed to be? Is that part of the issue? Is part of the issue that the things that they're testing for are too vague? So they're testing specific things, but they're conveying to the players vagueness, and whoever is in charge of looking through these things isn't getting the full picture of what is and isn't banned? Or is it that the supplements that they're taking are changing ingredients and not being conveyed to the players or the teams? Something is off, because I can't believe some of these players that are getting hit are using steroids. So it's got to be something, a stimulant of some sort, or some sort of just random banned thing.
Yeah, the whole thing is really weird. I don't know. When I heard about Mark Sanchez, I just kind of scratched my head. I'm like, He didn't play last year. He sat on the sidelines, and why would he be testing positive right now? It seemed really, really weird.
I mean, if you tell me that an offensive lineman that's a starter, starting left tackle, is using something performance enhancing, and you're like, man, I've got to block Khalil Mack every year. And so, yeah, I needed something. All right, I buy that. But when some of these guys are just like, most people are not going to admit that they cheated. They'll go tooth and nail that, I don't know what happened. But at some point, some of these players, you're just like, this just doesn't add up. And this one is, this is the most ridiculous one. It so doesn't make sense that the league's got to take notice of this. It points to some sort of flaw somewhere that they need to look at.
Yeah, I want a further explanation of exactly what they found, when they found it, something like that. That's what I'd really like to know. Maybe there is more information out there. I haven't looked into it that much, but I really would like to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, and apparently he has averaged about 8 drug tests per year for his entire career.
Wow.
And he was just absolutely shocked. And the thing is these tests, it's not like they take a test, 1 week and then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, they took it and were suspended. Some of them are like a year old. And so I don't know how the testing, if they make everybody submit a sample, or, whoever the random people that are giving samples, they make them, and then they make them take the sample or give the sample, and then they're randomly choosing who they're testing from there. That's a possibility. It's just so vague, and they even changed the name to PEDs, to performance enhancing drugs, which could be, it could be anything from, you can consider caffeine a performance enhancing drug. And so it's
not just steroids.
Yeah. Like, I think the league needs to start being more transparent. Number one, they need to tell everybody, these are the lists of performance enhancing drugs, and why they're on that list. And I think they should separate it out with things that are like steroids should be a bigger penalty than if they take something with, like a testosterone increaser. I think they need to differentiate, because for the average fan, they hear PEDs and they're like, steroids. They're shooting steroids.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what always goes to my mind, but yeah, then you realize there's a number of things that could be.
And to be honest, is the supplement market isn't regulated by any government agency. So sometimes they can put something in there and there's nobody that's forcing them to label it. They could leave the same label on there and add something new that's a banned substance.
Sometimes I think the leagues don't really know nearly enough about what they should know about performance enhancing drugs while they're giving out these suspensions. I mean, that's just kind of my theory I have.
Oh, I totally agree with you. It's I think this is a multifaceted issue. I think there should be, I don't think it should be, if the league is setting flat penalties for violating one of these substances, there should be an NFL person, not a team person, not a player person, a league person that is in charge of saying, you can, this is okay, this is not okay. And the NFL should, if a drug, if somebody tests positive and they've been taking a certain drug that was approved, then the league, it should be on the onus should be on the league saying, well, then we need to figure out if the the supplement makeup changed and causing this player to fail a test? And if so, then if that's the case, then we just need to change our, the people that were suspended because of that supplement. We don't suspend them, and then we add that substance to the ban list, that product. So the league needs to take a little more ownership of it if they're just going to hand out suspensions, because their policy now is if you put it in your body, you're responsible. But these are not players with science degrees. If you ask somebody and in earnest and say, hey, this is supposed to help me recover from, after workouts, and you take the product and it's been told that it's okay, and then they change their formula, how the hell are you supposed to know?
Right, exactly. And I think that maybe there needs to be more education on what it can do and why it does it before all this. But there's probably a lot more information to dive into than a lot of us know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that are used in conjunction with steroids and HGH and things that people are using to cheat and that are real performance enhancing drugs. There are drugs that are banned because they mask those agents. So they're saying if you test positive for the masking agent, then we're going to assume that you're using the agent that you're trying to mask.
Right.
I get that, but some of the things on the list are a little ridiculous, and NFL needs to, if they're just going to hand out and say you cheated under this blanket cheat rule, they need to have a little more ownership of what it is that they're calling cheating.
Right.
That's my piece on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are all good points.
So I guess the next big news with the Bears is we talked a little bit last week that Cameron Meredith got a 2-year, roughly $10 million offer sheet from the New Orleans Saints. And the Bears had until Wednesday, end of business day, to match it or let him walk. And I thought it was a little bit high for Cam Meredith based on the body of work he's shown so far and the seriousness of his injury. But I felt ultimately, based on the Bears cap situation and the need for that position, that they would have matched it. But they chose not to.
That surprised me. I know it surprised a lot of people. We know that despite the signings we've made in this offseason, that there's still a lot of depth issues on the wide receiver core because, you go back, Robinson, you look at your other guys, and it's like, okay, seems like they're still going to put a lot of trust into Kevin White. Not sure how you feel about that. You still have Josh Bellamy, and we know how that's gone. But the more thinking I did about it, to me, maybe it says that they're willing to draft another guy to take that place that they feel can have equal value. There's no one really much left on the free agent market, so I think that's kind of out of the question. Am I still a little surprised? Yeah, but I'm thinking and hoping they have a backup plan to this, because you need more on that wide receiver core. Despite signing Robinson and a few other guys, you still need more, because I don't trust Kevin White, unfortunately, at this point. Josh Bellamy, I think he's nothing more than a special teamer right now. You need more.
So if you haven't listened the last couple of weeks, basically Cam Meredith was a restricted free agent. And where that differs from an unrestricted free agent is you have, as the team, some mechanisms in place where you can help protect your ability to bring the player back. So they can tender a player, and they can do it at several different rounds. You can do it at a second round pick, or you can do it as an original round pick, which means that however through the draft you got that player, if a team signs him away, they have to compensate you at that same level of draft pick. Or you can do a second round pick, and that means that if the team, no matter where you drafted him, the other team, if they sign him away, you either have an opportunity to match the contract that he was offered, or that team has to give you a second round pick. The Bears chose to use the original round tender, and Cam Meredith was an undrafted rookie free agent. So that means they get no draft compensation. But the thing is, it was like a $1.9 million 1-year contract if nobody signed him in an offer sheet. But if they would have done the second round tender, it would have been like $3 million for 1 year. And you're basically saying nobody's going to give you a second round pick and have to pay Cam Meredith. So it's basically forcing him into a 1 year, $3 million deal. What Ryan Pace was trying to do is say, hey, we're going to sign you at the with no compensation, 1 year, $1.9 million, which is the lowest tender they can give. And if we're going to let you go out and set the market, have you and your agent negotiate with other teams, and we'll see what your value is on the market. And we will look at it and either match or don't match. And ultimately, I think they were expecting Cam Meredith to get probably in the $2 to $3 million range, and probably 3 years. And I think that's something the Bears would have absolutely matched. But Cam Meredith at 2 years and $5 million per year, they chose not to match. And you're right. This means as of right now, the Bears are relying on Kevin White to be a contributing starter, because Allen Robinson is your number one, and he's going to be your X. Taylor Gabriel is not really an outside receiver. He can play some, but he's a slot receiver, so he's going to be your Z. So you still need another outside wide receiver. And right now, that's Kevin White. So you expected it to be Cam Meredith. And the only thing I can think of is that the Bears are worried about that knee.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking as well. Maybe they know more about the situation of his knee than we thought. I still think that it is a little bit surprising, but I'm just going to try to play benefit of the doubt here. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. I certainly hope they can draft someone that can be a good contributor, because like I said, I don't trust the depth on this team. How many games has Kevin White played since he was drafted?
5.
Yeah, that's a tiny sample size, and what we saw wasn't all that impressive. And just getting hurt so many times like that, I hate to say it for Kevin White, because I can't imagine how frustrated he is right now with that. That must be an awful feeling. But in the interest of the Bears, I just don't know how you can trust them at that point, at that position. Maybe further down on a depth chart, but if you're going to trust them to be one of your top guys, I don't know how you can do that with how little he's played and the injuries he sustained.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us a little bit to another signing that the Bears made, and a look at the Bears depth chart a little bit. So I have people asking me, almost immediately after the Bears declined to sign Cam Meredith, they went out and signed wide receiver Benny Fowler, and people are like, so you're basically saying you're replacing Cam Meredith with Benny Fowler, and that is not the case at all.
It's not.
Those two things are mutually exclusive. Benny Fowler is a special teams guy, and when he does play, he's a slot receiver. So if he makes the roster, which who knows if he will, he'll be a special teams guy and he'll be Taylor Gabriel's backup. He's not going to play on the outside. So you're still looking at another outside receiver. So right now your two outside guys starters are Allen Robinson and Kevin White. Your slot is Taylor Gabriel, and the guys that are fighting for you imagine you're going to carry 6 wide receivers. Your choices are Josh Bellamy, Benny Fowler, Tanner Gentry, DeMarcus Ayers, and Mikhail McKay.
Yeah. They need more. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. And this is becoming another situation where on paper you're like, okay, we can get by if everybody stays healthy, but Allen Robinson is also coming off of a serious knee injury.
Right.
Kevin White is coming off of every single year he's had a season-ending injury. Yep. So, you are reasonable probability of injury away from another year of Mitch Trubisky having to throw to random guys.
Yeah, that's not something that we really want to see again. God forbid one of those guys, key guys that we signed gets hurt, but knowing the Bears' luck, we've had plenty of issues with injuries, and especially with the ones that have had, injury histories. So I think draft night, we're going to see what happens. I'm not saying in the first round. I'm not saying that they're going to suddenly go after like Calvin Ridley in the first round. That's not going to happen. But I think in the later rounds, you're going to see more drafting of a wide receiver because, let's face it, they need more guys.
This is a pretty deep wide receiver draft.
That's the
class.
nice thing about it.
I think you can get a guy who could contribute in rounds 1 through 4. And the Bears have, it's silly to draft somebody in the first because either you're reaching for a guy that's not, shouldn't be drafted that high, or you're trading back. And I'm fine trading back to a degree, but I feel like where they are right now is they're going to get better than average. You're going to get a better player than you would in most years at the number 8 pick because of how many quarterbacks are expected to go. And so might as well draft while the drafting's good rather than trade back. I would rather have a much better player in the first round than pick up like a 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
You can always pick up a 3rd round pick somehow. But being able to draft that high in the first, especially when in a year with so many quarterbacks expected to go, I feel like you gotta stay put.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And like you said, since it's so deep, you don't have to reach for anything in the first round. I don't think they are going to reach for anything in the first round. Heck, maybe even in the 3rd round they get somebody reliable, or the 2nd round, anywhere near there. If they could get somebody that's going to be reliable and going to be better than Josh Bellamy, who, like I said, is a better special teamer than he is a receiver, that would be a pretty nice thing to get because there's not much you can trust beyond the guys we signed right now. And I think that since Ryan Pace knows how deep this is, maybe his thought process was, well, you know what? We'll just fill his spot in the draft. We're not going to pay him that money. Because like you said, it was higher than we all expected for Josh Bellamy to be worth. It wasn't like the Kyle Fuller thing where
Cam Meredith.
I'm sorry?
Cam Meredith, not Josh Bellamy.
I'm sorry, Cam Meredith. I'm sorry. My bad.
Oh, no problem.
But yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, absolutely. And I agree. And I think that the Bears were worried a little bit about his knee. And I would imagine if it was a 3-year deal with reasonable money, they would have done it because if you're going to have him multiple years, you're like, okay, well, then it'll average out because you might not be expecting much from this year. But for the 1 year, it's, or for 2 years, you're paying basically, I think the Bears are saying that they're not expecting very much from him this year. and it'll be that second year, and you're basically saying we're a 1 year, $10 million contract. And, a lot of the national, writers and bloggers and stuff are saying, the Bears basically gave him away for nothing when it could have cost him $1 million to keep him. Is sure, if you would have put the second round tender, nobody was going to give you a second round pick and sign him away. So it's basically saying he's going to play for 1 year, $3 million. But I think if, the Bears are very, the Bears know his need better than any other team. And if they didn't expect him to be a huge contributor this year because of the knee, what's the sense in signing him to a 1 year, $3 million deal? You're not going to get your value from it. And next year, you're going to have to figure out how to sign him anyway. And if he doesn't perform, the Bears look like geniuses. And if they sign him to 1 year, $3 million, people are going to be like, oh, paid $3 million to another injured player. It's people talk out of both sides of their mouth. They're mad that they drafted Kevin White, who didn't have an injury history and has had season-ending broken bones, which you can't foresee that. It's knee injuries. You can go, all right, he have a history of knee injuries. That means he's more likely to have another knee injury statistically. Broken bones, there's no rhyme, no reason they happen. So people are mad about Kevin White, but then they're mad that you didn't sign an injured Cam Meredith. It just doesn't make sense. And if you do sign him to that 1 year, $3 million, and he defies your expectations with the injury and has a great season, then guess what? He's an unrestricted free agent next year, and then you're going to have to pay him big bucks. So it's not $1 million. That's a lazy way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I get some disappointment, but I think that they can make the proper moves to really kind of compensate for it. So am I still a little surprised? Yeah, but I'm not going to get unbelievably down about it.
And there are a few guys left that could fill a spot. I mean, Dontrell Inman is still available.
I was just going to ask about him. He might be a guy they'd consider bringing back, wouldn't it?
Oh, I have a feeling he's not going to go. So the guys that are on the market right now, they're not signing before the draft. Basically, free agency is on pause until after the draft. Is all of the NFL teams, the GMs, the scouts, etc., are focused on the draft, and then once that's over, they'll reevaluate what they have in draft assets and their current roster, and then free agency 2.0 starts. It's nothing official, but that's the reality of what happens. So if you're the Bears, you're like, well, Dontrell Inman is still sitting there, and if we just don't get who we want in the draft and we don't get a wide receiver or we don't see one of value, they could always sign a Dontrell Inman, and that's a good insurance policy for Kevin White. Is he as talented as Kevin White? No. But if Kevin White doesn't perform and gets hurt again or doesn't look like what we expected when we drafted him, then Dontrell Inman was okay. And he
knows Trubisky, so I mean that's got to help a little bit, right?
He developed somewhat of a rapport with Trubisky, but he had last year with a John Fox coached offense, and no other wide receivers. He went out there and performed. Now he would be probably, if he ends up being a starter and they bring him back and Kevin White doesn't perform, there's a lot of ifs there, but he's going to be the option behind Allen Robinson, behind Taylor Gabriel, behind Trey Burton, and behind Tariq Cohen as options in the offense. So there's other options, and he's not going to get double coverage. He's not going to get the best cornerback. So I feel like the Bears feel that there's options, and they would rather conserve that money for next year and for when they need to extend Mitch Trubisky to a long-term contract.
Yeah, for sure.
But wide receiver talk leads us to, I've seen a lot of people ask, why don't the Bears go after Dez Bryant?
Yeah, I knew this would be a question.
I wrote an article about it. Let me read it to you. Should the Bears sign Dez Bryant? No. Period. The end. Sean. There's no reason to bring in a Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant is on the downside of his career. If the Bears were in a position where they were competing for, they had a reasonable shot of making the Super Bowl, then I would say, yeah, I would try to get Dez Bryant on a short contract because he can be an impactful wide receiver, especially if he's not your first option. But the Bears are in a really tough division. They're in a really tough division, and they're still rebuilding. So you would have all of the distraction, and by the time you're ready to compete, he's going to be even further down on the downslide of his career. So it's just waste of money. Let him go to a team like the Texans, where they've got a young quarterback too, but they've got a solid defense, and there were injury reasons why they didn't perform well this year. And you expect them to be a playoff team next year, and he stays in his home state. Let him go to the Patriots, where they find a lot of use for aging former star wide receivers, because Tom Brady is going to make them look better than they are. The Bears aren't an option.
If the Dallas Cowboys cut you, I think there's really then something off. Like, I don't know if it's character or just what they do in the locker room or what kind of teammate they are. There's got to be something that's just not right here. Now, you look back last season, 383 yards the year before, 796 in 13 games. The year before, he only played in 9. He was a Pro Bowler in 2016, and he was a Pro Bowler in 13 and 14. And I still think he'll be a productive guy in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, like you said, right now he's 29. The Bears are still rebuilding. By the time they are probably contending, it'll be, past his prime. He said the Cowboys did not ask Brian to accept a pay cut in order to stay. So there's obviously something going on there. So I know exactly where you're getting at with all this.
Yeah, so it's just not a good fit for the Bears. And I'm not saying Dez Bryant is a total bum or not worth it. It's just not worth it for this team where they're at. If in 2 years this was the situation, then it would be a different evaluation.
Yeah.
Because in 2 years you expect the Bears to be competing for the division title. But right now they've got a good Packers team, a good Lions team, and a good Vikings team ahead of them. And they're still trying to get core pieces into place. So it just doesn't make sense. I mean, it makes way more sense for the Packers than the Bears.
Yeah, it does. But do they really have the cap room to sign him? Because I don't know what he's going to be asking for. He may get cheaper than he expects, or he may be asking for some money. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what he expects. I think his first thing was he was trying to go to the Redskins to be a revenge team. I mean, if the Eagles had money, that would be an awesome pickup for the Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
Because that would just rub it into the Cowboys' face. Because the Eagles, you expect them to be better than Dallas this year, and if you add a Dez Bryant, where he's going to be your number 2 or number 3 option with an NFL MVP candidate quarterback, then yeah, it's going to be a much different situation.
Well, you saw what he said, right? How he wanted to play the Cowboys 2 times a year.
Yeah, because he's mad.
Yeah,
I mean, makes sense. But he's going to have to reevaluate.
Division, yeah.
I mean, you know, is you have to ask yourself, is it worth going? Eagles aren't an option. They don't have the cap room. So either you're going to take minimal money for shorter years to play them twice for a team that's going to win. You can go to the Giants, but they're terrible. You can go to the Redskins, and they're not that good. So it doesn't make sense to go in the division. You have to, if you want to get revenge on the Cowboys, you have to think bigger, and you have to think, I'm going to go to the Texans and stay in state and try to help them win a Super Bowl, or I'm going to go to New England and try to win a Super Bowl. Is winning the Super Bowl and being an impactful member of the team is what's going to rub it, show up the Cowboys.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure. Well, okay, so you said the Giants. Yeah, I mean, they're in a bad situation now. I just couldn't help but wonder if, say, he thought, okay, if they're going to draft a quarterback, someone young, and then, I don't know. I know they're still rebuilding, but I would see him going to the Giants more than I could see a few other teams. But no, I definitely agree with you overall. I think that nothing would feel better to him than rubbing the Lombardi trophy in the Cowboys' faces.
That's going to be a much more deep rub than beating the Cowboys in a regular season game.
One that's going to last for sure.
Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about with the Bears is I just want to go over that depth chart as it stands right now. We're less than 2 weeks from the draft. So it's going to be not this coming week, but the week after. So we're kind of looking at where the roster is and where we can see the definite need for improvement. I'm not one for drafting out of need, because I think that's where you end up reaching for a player and missing good opportunities. But you also have to keep in mind where your needs are when you're drafting, because if you have one player ranked a little bit higher than the other one, but you need the other position, sometimes that weighs out over, adding, if you're in a position where there's Bradley Chubb versus Saquon Barkley, Saquon Barkley's probably, that's a little bit of a stretch. If you're there with Roquan Smith and Saquon Barkley, you need a linebacker much more than you need a running back. And although one is better than the other one as a prospect, you sort of got to pass up on that little bit to get a need. So it's a ebb and flow balance. But offense right now, the quarterback position, you feel pretty set at that. You got Mitch Trubisky, and then as a backup, you've got Chase Daniel and Tyler Bray. Tyler Bray is going to be on the practice squad, you would imagine. And Chase Daniel is a guy that you brought in because of his knowledge and of the Matt Nagy system and his knowledge of experience of working with him before. So this is a guy that you don't have high expectations of his caliber on the field, but if he has to go in, number one, if he has to go in, he knows the system and can work it well and not have to be handcuffed as most backups are. And two is he's going to help Mitch Trubisky speed up that learning curve because he knows the system.
It really was kind of an underrated signing for all those reasons, in my opinion.
Yeah, you pay him really good money to be a backup quarterback, but I don't know.
They got plenty of cap room. I'm not going to
complain. And honestly, you know what I would also not complain about is if you hired a assistant quarterback coach named Mark Sanchez. You can't suspend him from being a coach.
No, you can't. I thought it was nice having him on the squad last year, actually. Who knows if he's even going to play again, so why not?
You can't. Yeah, I would not be opposed to that. He was a really good influence, I think, on the team, and
I agree.
You could have him be on the sideline without having to take up a roster spot. I think it's just not a bad move, and you're going to pay him a lot less than $2 million a year. So
right,
we'll see how that goes. Running back, you've got Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, Benny Cunningham. Taquan Mizell and Michael Burton. You feel pretty confident in your running back situation. I don't see them drafting anybody early. If they draft somebody, I feel it'll be the back end of the draft, and it's going to be a guy who is a receiving option.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about that right now. I feel like they should be confident with what they have because they got a lot of good talent on all ends of the running back field. You have running backs that can catch. You have running backs that can power through. You have pretty much everything nice spread out on that running back core. You got agility. You got strength. And it's not all in one guy. Each guy does something a little different. You have more of a receiver in Benning Cunningham. You got a speedy guy in Tariq Cohen. You have a power guy in Jordan Howard. Everything's all nicely spread out there.
Yeah, I like the running backs. Like I said, I don't know anything about Mizell or Burton. I think Burton was a fullback.
Yeah, he was.
So I don't know if they're going to use a fullback this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if they take a running back like fifth, sixth, seventh rounds, or bring in undrafted rookies for depth. But I just don't see them drafting one in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, I don't either.
Wide receiver is Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel. You're confident in those 2 guys. Then it's your next best receiver is Kevin White. And barring any injuries, those are 3 that you probably expect to be a lock on your roster. Then it's Josh Bellamy, Benny Fowler, who you don't want to be wide receivers unless it's, last resort. Those are more special teams guys. Tanner Gentry is a practice squad type guy. You've got DeMarcus Ayers and Mikhail McKay. So you still need depth there. That's a spot where you expect them to probably draft somebody, probably bring in some undrafted rookies, and possibly sign a veteran in the second part of free agency.
Yeah. I mean, like we said, there's going to be some more added to that via the draft, so it's kind of a wait and see for me.
You've got your offensive lineman, your starting 5, I would imagine. I mean, there might be some shuffling here based on training camp, but Charles Leno, Kyle Long, Cody Whitehair, Eric Cush, Bobby Massey, and your backups are Cameron Lee, Bradley Soule, Hronis Grasu, Jordan Morgan, Brandon Green, and Travis Averill. This is a roster that you could see them bringing in a young draft pick, but you could also see them standing pat. I liked the Jordan Morgan when they brought him in. He was a 5th or 6th round draft pick a couple years ago, and they put him on the practice squad and the quote injured reserve, but it's really a red shirt. He's a guy that's just a mauler, and I feel like if you can get him the better footwork, he could be an interesting option. So between Eric Cush and Jordan Morgan, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't bring in another guard. But if they sign Quentin Nelson or they draft Quentin Nelson, I could see that too. So that's an area where they definitely need to improve, but they might improve based on a young guy getting better and another guy being healthy.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
I think if anything, you need to upgrade your right tackle spot over your guard positions. Defensive linemen. Your 3 down linemen, you're looking at Jonathan Bullard, Eddie Goldman, and Akeem Hicks. And your backups are Roy Robertson Harris, William Parakak. You just signed John Jenkins, and you got Rashad Coward. This is one where I would like to see them bring in somebody in via the draft that's first couple rounds, because Akeem Hicks, you know what you're getting. Eddie Goldman, you like that. John Jenkins is going to back up Eddie Goldman, and you're fine with him as a backup. But Jonathan Bullard needs to take that next step forward if the Bears defense is going to be really good. And I'm concerned that he won't. So I would love to see them bring in somebody with higher upside.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Roy Robertson Harris had some flashes last year, but again, he was an undrafted free agent rookie. So you expect those guys most of the time to have some sort of ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. You don't really expect them to play at a Pro Bowl level by any means, but you would hope that they could still be semi-decent in the roles they have.
Yeah, I like him as a backup and a rotational guy.
Yeah, for sure, but not a starter.
Yeah, if you could bring in somebody that was really good to take Jonathan Bullard's spot, and Roy Robertson Harris and Jonathan Bullard were your rotational guys for Akeem Hicks and whoever the starter is, I'm much more comfortable with that, because I think if you're the Bears this year, you're going to have to rely on inside pressure because of what we'll talk about next.
Yeah, for sure.
Your linebacking core, which includes your because they're play a 3-4 base, is your outside linebackers and your inside linebackers. So your edge rushers are going to be Leonard Floyd, Sam Acho as your starters, and Danny Trevathan and Nick Kwiatkowski as your starting inside linebackers, with your backups being Aaron Lynch, and Howard Jones, Jonathan Anderson, John Timu, and Isaiah Irving. This is a group that needs as much talent infused as possible.
Yeah, because there's a lot of meh and there's a lot of injury prone on there, and you're going to need to add depth big time.
Yeah, absolutely. You really need to add depth. I forgot to go through tight ends. Tight ends, you got Trey Burton, Adam Shaheen, Deion Sims, Daniel Brown, Ben Broniker, and Colin Thompson. So even if the Bears don't address the wide receiver situation in a way that the fans are excited about, which would be a guy in the first 2 rounds, I think they're going to be okay, because, like I said, they'll bring in somebody young, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't bring a Dontrell Inman type back. And you're going to run probably 2 wide receiver sets where you'll move Taylor Gabriel to the outside. And you'll have Allen Robinson on the other side. And then you're going to have a Trey Burton go out and be almost like a wide receiver, with Adam Shaheen or Deion Sims, one of the two, being your inside guy who's going to do either stay as an inline blocker or go out for a run a route and run a 2 wide receiver, 2 tight end set. That's almost like a 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end set. So Trey Burton kind of gives you some flexibility because he's sort of like a hybrid wide receiver tight end. It gives you some flexibility that you're not going to have to rely necessarily on whoever is lining up opposite of Allen Robinson in a 3 wide receiver set.
Yeah, I think the tight end core as it stands is pretty good. I mean, it's pretty solid, because if Adam Shaheen plays to the potential that they have, that's going to be really good to have alongside Trey Burton. And, I didn't think Sims was all that terrible last year, so he might be, solid depth. I'm not saying this is the best tight end core in football, but I think it's solid enough to get the job done if all goes well.
There's a reason they didn't cut Deion Sims, and I feel like there's enough weapons on here and enough interesting guys that they might carry an extra tight end this year and really try to utilize that as an option, and use those weapons more. You expect Matt Nagy to utilize the weapons they have rather than moan about weapons that they don't have.
Yeah, no doubt.
But linebacker is obviously the biggest position of need on this team. You're fine with your starting inside linebackers, but both guys have been injured over the last couple of years. So you worry about that depth behind them. And there's no clear starter opposite of Leonard Floyd. Sam Acho has been a backup guy, and Aaron Lynch is a guy who's only ever performed while playing under Vic Fangio. You don't necessarily expect a lot from him, and he was only on a short 1-year contract that for minimal money. Defensive backs, your starters for as it look right now is Prince Amukamara, Kyle Fuller as your cornerbacks, and Eddie Jackson, Adrian Amos as your safeties. Your backups are looking like Cravon LeBlanc, Marcus Cooper, Sherrick McManus, DeAndre Hall, Doran Grant, John Mincy, DeAndre Houston Carson, and Deion Bush. So you probably expect them to try to pad that depth with in the draft, but it's not the worst group. They're backups,
Right.
and in your defensive backs, I wouldn't be shocked if they don't bring Bryce Callahan back. He's still a restricted free agent, original round tender, but I wouldn't expect anything until after the draft.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that leaves us to baseball.
Yeah, I've been waiting to talk about this.
The White Sox got snowed out most of the week.
Yeah, 3 of their 4 games were canceled.
And what you did see when they played was, I guess, the downside of what we expected from them this year is the starting pitchers are really having trouble finding the strike zone. They had their 4th consecutive start with at least 5 walks from the starters, and there was only one of those 4 where there was more strikeouts than walks. You couple that with their hitters having too many strikeouts and some timely errors, and there's a reason this team is 4-8.
Yeah, they've had some struggles in a number of areas. Obviously, it's going to be something that you're going to see with a young team. There's going to be a lot of growing pains. You see the talent, you see the potential, but there's a lot of adjustments that are going to have to be made by this young team, and that's just expected. Cutting out on the strikeouts, that's obviously a big one. Another big one is, I guess, just timely hitting in general, because we've seen them strand a lot of base runners, a lot of scoring opportunities. So that's just going to be part of the learning process.
And Lucas Giolito, I think this is going to be confidence issues more than talent issue. Is in his last start, he struggled a little bit and had 5 walks in 6 innings. And prior to that start, I think it was after his last start, he talked about how much he wanted to incorporate his curveball more into the game. And if you watch the game, he almost entirely used his slider and changeups. Very few curveballs in there. So I think that's a situation of not having confidence in a pitch, because if you're a young guy and you're not sure about a pitch, a curveball is one you don't want to leave hanging.
No.
So I think I'm chalking that up to mental issues from a young player and things that you're just going to work out. And, as you're playing more and more, he's taking a big step up in level of play. And like I said, we saw the talent he has in spring training. He's going to come around.
Oh, for sure. And I think when the weather gets warmer and he can have a better grip on his pitches, you're going to see that come around a little bit. Because let's face it, the weather has just been so bad. Even when they have played, it's been cold, it's been rainy, it's been miserable. So that can probably take a toll on a young player.
Absolutely. This has been I know baseball the month of April is usually pretty terrible, but I feel like this, maybe it's just local bias, but I feel like this month has been terrible, more terrible than most seasons in weather.
The number of cancellations we've seen so far around baseball, I feel like it's really high.
And not just cancellations, but cancellations because of snow.
Yeah.
I mean, today's Cubs game, it was, I don't know if you went out today, but we went out for brunch. We went out for brunch and not too far from the stadium. And we were in there for like, I don't know, hour 15 and came out and my windshield was full of slush and snow.
Yeah. It was just miserable outside.
It was cold. It was like sleet. Like, how do you expect people to play baseball in this?
I know we're going to talk all about Saturday's Cubs game because that was a huge thing, but Joe Madden said it best. This isn't baseball weather. They shouldn't be playing in this kind of weather. It's unfortunate that sometimes they have to because the Braves don't come back to Wrigley Field. So finding a day to make these games up is not easy. But this is not baseball weather. You shouldn't be playing in this.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that quote, is because I had that in my notes to talk about. Is I understand the point he's trying to make is because this is terrible weather to play in, but it sounded, I mean, maybe it's just me, but it sounded like he was using it as an excuse a bit for poor pitching and, guys not hitting the ball well. But if that's what he's trying to do, then that's unfair because the other team's playing in the same exact weather. And they're doing it better than you are. So you can't chalk any of the Cubs' poor play recently as part of the weather because both teams are playing it. Now, if you're just trying to say that this sucks and baseball needs to figure out something, I'm all for that. Is I know that baseball says you can't play the entire first month of the season in Arizona and California and Texas and Florida. And I just say, you're right. You can add domes in there too, because I think the players would rather spend a month away from home and not have to play in snow.
Yeah, I think that Madden quote, since he said it after the win yesterday, to me, it's just more of a this sucks playing in this weather kind of thing. And I also think it comes from the perspective that he's just worried about his players getting hurt in this. Like, I mean, it's dangerous to play in this. So I don't think it's as much of an excuse thing, but just the fact that it's not right to play in that. I think that's what he was getting at.
Yeah, you're right. It is not right to play in that weather. It's, I know you tweeted out that you give a shout out to any fans that were at the game. I don't know if I didn't see it. Like I said, I was at the Blackhawks practice facility, so I didn't see the game. I don't even know how many fans were there, but I can't imagine it was a sellout.
By the late innings, there might have been just maybe over a few hundred, maybe not even 1,000 people. One of my friends, she was there the whole time. She saw that whole game. Another one of my friends, he left after the 6th inning. He was sitting in the upper lower level, and he left after the 6th. And I mean, there's been a lot of talk online saying, "Oh, you're only a loyal Cubs fan if you stayed the whole." Dude, it was 10-2. You were down 10-2. Do you really, really blame people for not wanting to sit in that garbage weather?
Yeah, that weather sucked. I had to walk from the parking lot of the training facility to the inside, and I was like, and I basically bundled my daughter up and ran with her because she was like crying because of the weather with the wind blowing in her face, and at one point in the tour when we left the locker room is without having to go through like a restricted area is. I mean, we were already in a restricted area, but like another restricted areas, we had to walk outside and then go back in through the front doors. And it was probably 20 feet. And I ran because I didn't have my coat with me. And I was like, oh, this sucks. I'm running. And I can't imagine sitting out there for 2.5 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. That was a 14-10 game, and it was, long. It was long in the worst weather possible to play baseball in. I mean, it was windy, it was wet, it was cold. Oh, God.
And statistically, is in the 7th inning, based on the score, they had a 0.5% chance to win the game.
They had a 2% chance in the 8th inning when they had the bases loaded, so it went up a little bit, but that's still 2%.
Yeah, so at one point, people left. They were like, all right, my team's getting crushed in awful weather, and statistically, mathematically, they have a 0.5% chance of winning this game. I'm just not going to subject myself to getting sick. I'm going to go home, and I'm fine with that. If you missed out on excitement, but you know what? The bigger odds were on you getting sick.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, I turned the game off when they were down like 7-1. I'm like, okay, this is garbage. I was getting too frustrated. I went and did laundry. I was working on laundry, doing stuff, yada yada. And then I'm reading tweets on like, oh, it's 10-2 now, yippee. It's 10-3 now, yippee. And then suddenly the bases are loaded. Oh, there's an infield single. It's 10-5. There's a walk, 10-6. Then there's a walk to Zobrist, 10-7. The base is still loaded. And I'm thinking, wow, this is getting interesting. And that's when Baez came up. So it had my attention again. And the game went back on. And next thing you knew, it was tied. I mean, it was so amazing because that entire rally in the 8th inning, all those runs were scored. All 9 runs were scored with 2 outs.
Yeah, and it's weird on that game. It's funny because they scored 14 runs. They had more runs than they had hits.
Yeah, I mean, how many walks did they take? And that's one of those things where you look at the Atlanta Braves and you're like, man, you can tell it was hard to pitch in those conditions. It just was.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's one of those things is like the Cubs weren't necessarily hitting that well. Ian Happ went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. You had Hayward settling back into his garbagedom. A lot of guys weren't hitting. There's only a couple of guys that got multiple hits, but you ended up scoring a lot of runs, and you'd hope that seeing an outcome like that, grinding things out, playing hard, getting the walks, you would just hope that would springboard and set the Cubs offense back into gear. I mean, I know that's a big hope, but I think getting weathered out today is setting them back. The momentum is not going to carry.
Yeah, I don't know how much I buy anymore into that whole, big win momentum thing. I think it can affect people differently. Because we saw last year in the first half where we said, oh, this big win, this is what's going to do it. This is what's going to turn it around. And it necessarily wasn't the case. I mean, just the way I see that game it was a huge just lift that day for the team and the fans because, boy, the frustration was really boiling over. And I was frustrated as hell, too, because, this is a good team. They looked like they were on their way to being 2 games under 500. And now they got back to 500. And yeah, I know it's early, but it just felt like a really big lift.
Yeah, I agree with you that I don't always buy into the momentum thing, but I will buy into that hitting is contagious. Sure. And although they didn't get that many hits, you feel like it's a confidence boost and you're going to see some better play from people. But then you get weathered out today and probably more of the same, not hitting with runners in scoring position, too many strikeouts, guys not getting hits, is probably going to carry on. Because honestly, has this offense had any momentum sustained momentum since Dexter Fowler left.
No, I mean, it's had a really good second half last year, but you saw, like I said, I think it was after the Schwarber Grand Slam game last year. That was either in late May or early June. That looked like it was the big shifter, and it really kind of wasn't. So, I don't really see it as a momentum shifter, and it's hard to call it a momentum shifter when it's so early in the season. It's kind of like, okay, it's not like we're entering the final stretch or the halfway point. It's so early in the season, but yet it was still such a necessary lift. And granted, a lot of it was just the team letting themselves come back in because a lot of Braves mistakes, but they took advantage of that. The Baez hit was by far the biggest hit of the game, and that was well done by Baez. It was a full count. He was probably leaning on fastball because he didn't want to walk anybody, and he just took it right back up the middle, and luckily for position playing, that just absolute smoked line drive went all the way to the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. We're very early in the season, not necessarily needing like that late momentum shift to get us into the playoffs. But think about is 2016 when we won the World Series is what an amazing start we got off to the season off to. And last year is we really struggled until the very end of the season. And even then it wasn't like we were firing on all cylinders. And the struggles carried on into the playoffs. Sure, they made it to the NLCS again, but did you ever feel like there was a chance that they were going to beat the Dodgers?
No, the bullpen was toast. It was absolutely toast.
Yeah, and it is. We need this team to score more runs. I know the pitching staff is going to eventually find its groove. You can't rely on your bullpen to be ace and your rotation to be ace and win 1-0, 2-1 games. You need to start scoring runs.
For sure. And, I kind of wanted to bring up on the show today an article I wrote for Cubby's Crib recently. It was 4 days ago. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but it was the 2016 may have created unrealistic expectations. Did you get a chance to read that at all?
I didn't.
Okay, so basically what I talked about this is when the team was 5-5 and, there was frustration, and which is fine because, they lost to a very terrible Reds team and a very terrible Marlins team more than they would have liked to start the season. But I think that a lot of Cub fans were kind of subconsciously attached to that start they had in 2016. They were 17-5 in April, 18-10 in May. Through the first 2 months, they had a 35-15 record. They were playing .700 baseball. And since this is pretty much the same team, we just kind of subconsciously expect this team to do it again because they are so good. But the truth of the matter is, that's a really, really hard thing to do. And it's very rare. They had a 128 plus run differential through the first 2 months. April alone was a plus 79. Those are ridiculous numbers, and you're probably not going to see that again.
No, I agree with you. Having that start like that for 2016, unrealistic, but having a hot start, definitely, especially in a young team, is going to help boost their play. I think is playing from behind is hard enough for veterans, but young players, I think the mentality is harder to come by. That you need to come back. Talent wise, they're far and away the most talented team in this division, so you expect them to win still. But it would be nice to get ahead of somebody by a few games and play with the lead, because I feel like the way this team plays is they play better ahead than behind. And if you could be in a spot like the Pirates are, where it's not a phenomenal record, but it's a pretty good record, and when you're up by a few games already in the division, you feel like that's the best spot for the Cubs.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I don't want them to dig a hole either. I really don't. I don't think it's good to do that again. This division's better than it was last year. You don't want to get off to that same mediocre start. But I'm just saying that you really can't, A, you can't judge 2 weeks in a long season. And B, if you're wanting to see almost exactly what happened in 2016, that's just not going to happen. A 2.93 staff ERA through the first 2 months, 275 runs scored. I mean, that is just ridiculous. You want to see them play 500 and better, but you're not going to see 35 and 15 again.
No, I agree. But there's definitely a lot of room for improvement on this team. And number one is, why is Ian Happ still your leadoff hitter?
Should be Ben Zobrist. It really should be. I mean, his numbers right now, he's leading the team in average. Oh, no, sorry. He's second in average behind Bryant. And I think he's second behind Bryant as well. Yeah, he is in on-base percentage. He's slashing 326, 408, 465. He should be leading off, not Happ.
Absolutely. Happ, I mean, yesterday you scored 14 runs yesterday, and he was 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. He had 2 hits the day before, but you didn't score any runs. So he is not impacting your game. He's not in a positive way. Is even when he gets a couple of hits, which I think was at his first multi-hit game of the season.
I know he had a multi-hit game a few days ago, but yeah, it might have been.
Is you're not as a leadoff hitter, you're supposed to be setting, the tone of the game, you're setting the deck, and he's not. So he's just a guy. Ben is, you got to ride. Baseball is a game where, although it's probably the most team game, I guess maybe football is, but it's not like basketball where one guy can take over the whole game. But if you have a really hot player, is that can ride you to a lot of wins. Is think about Daniel Murphy, is when he's hitting 370. Look at those teams, the record in those games, because he, it's sometimes it's 1 or 2 runs in a game is going to be the difference. And you want your best hitter or your hottest hitter to get the most at bats. And right now that's Ben Zobrist. There's probably going to be a time when he's either injured or he's going through a slump that you're going to have to replace him, but you've got to ride those hot bats. Is the Angels are riding hot bats right now, and look at the record that they have. It's really good.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's very impressive what they've done. It is a game of ups and downs. You're going to go through streaks. Baseball is very weird. But yeah, the main thing is you want to see more consistency from this lineup. You want to see guys, you see big slumps. You see guys doing great like Bryant and Zobrist, but you're seeing a lot of struggling. You're seeing Happ struggling. I mean, Hayward, he hasn't really been that great with the bat in his tenure here, but you're just seeing a lot of inconsistency. You just want that to get a little better.
Yeah, and I understand that this is a 162 game season, and there's nobody has consistency throughout the entire season. But if to give yourself the best chance to win in the regular season, and which means positioning yourself the best you can for the postseason, is you've got to make the most of the peaks when they're there and minimize the valleys. If you're just going to sit there and be like, well, right now Addy is struggling and Happy's struggling, but they'll come back around. Yeah, they will. But maybe you should be taking advantage of the fact that Ben Zobrist is healthy and hitting the ball right now, especially while Rizzo's still on disabled list, which I think he might be coming back this week.
He's coming back tomorrow. So Monday. He should be back for the Cardinals series. which is good timing. Good to have Rizzo back when your big arch rivals return.
Yeah, so it's you just need to maximize the peaks when you have them, because if you have a guy that's just crushing the ball and everybody in front of him is not getting on base, then you're not scoring the runs. You built this team a lot on sabermetrics. Then you know what is put your hottest hitters at the top of the order. Don't worry about it. Ben Zobrist first, Chris Bryant second. Whoever's hitting is bat them and let them knock in each other. If the bottom of the order is not getting on base, then might as well not get on base and in order, and then let the hot hitters get on base around each other. I just feel like you have to optimize when things are going well for the players to get these wins.
Yeah, I mean, you look at kind of who's hot right now, like we said before. Probably right now the best hitters on this team, Zobrist, Bryant. Listell is a bench guy. He's doing quite well for himself. Elmore is starting to swing it a little better. Schwarber's up and down. Contreras has been doing fairly well. So, I mean, those are your guys right now that are producing. And so if that's the case, there should be no reason why Ben Zobrist isn't in the leadoff, and then you have Brian a cleanup, or, you put Rizzo back there. But Rizzo's going to be coming back from injury, and, he's off to a slow start, which the first week he traditionally is. I also did an article about that on Cubby's Crib. But, I mean, you got to kind of adjust your lineups here to what's working, because, let's face it, Joe tends to let these experiments go a little long. We saw it with Kyle Schwarber leading off. And, if you have obvious other options, like for leadoff, whether it's Elmore or Zobrist, go with that. Just go with it. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. You got options. This team has got a lot of players that are good caliber players. Play them. Give people the chance to hit when their hitting's good. And if that player falters, then let's go back to the guys that were struggling and give them back another opportunity to earn their time at the times at bat. It's Happer just isn't. It's not working right now, and I don't know if it's because he's in the leadoff spot or if he's just struggling in general. But he's struggling mightily, and he doesn't even look good in a lot of these at bats. So give him time off. Give him time off, and then when you bring him back, put him at the bottom of the order. Yeah, move him down at the very least.
So give a young hitter a better chance.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a lot of mental things or he just needs to make adjustments, because I mean, you can tell he's swinging and missing at a lot of different pitches. Yesterday, he swung and missed at 2 fastballs up in the zone, which, you don't like to see that. He's also swinging and missing at a lot of off-speed stuff. The selection really isn't there, so that's kind of frustrating. His on-base percentage right now is .271. That's not good. So, that's something that just needs to be worked on. You look at some of these other guys on the team right now, and they may not be hitting the ball, but I will give Jason Hayward some credit for batting 200, a 302 on base. At least he's drawing some walks. Baez has been drawing walks. He has a 191 average, but a 309 on base. I mean, that's quite a big difference. He's been walking a bit more. His OPS is 884. So, you're seeing.
Well, and Baez is traditionally a guy who his on-base percentage is not that much higher than his batting average.
No, it's usually around right below or at league average, which league average is about 320. So I don't know if that's going to last very long, but it's at least nice to see him be a little more patient at times. So at least some guys are drawing their walks, but like I said, we need more consistency. Putting the ball in play when you need to. There's too many strikeouts with guys at third and less than 2 outs, because it's been really frustrating watching them have a good scoring opportunity, guys in scoring position and third base, where all you need to do is put the ball in play, then they strike out, and then they hit a long fly ball for an out with 2 outs. And it's like, why couldn't that have come the at-bat before? Because that would have driven in a run. So that's been really frustrating for me, is that they're doing the wrong things at the wrong times. Do I think it's going to even out? Yes. But, you gotta get around to it more consistently.
Yeah, it's being able to, make contact with the ball you're right, is if you've got runners in scoring position with less than 2 outs, it shouldn't be that difficult to put the bat on the ball and get a fly ball to the outfield to drive in a run. There's several guys on this team where they put huge shifts on. If you see that, like try to drive it to the other direction, even if it's bloopy, is either make the defense honest or make them pay. Right now the Cubs are doing the things that the other team's trying to get them to do. Swing at bad pitches, hit into shifts. This is an inexperienced offense. I know they've been in the league several years, but Zobrist and Hayward are really your 2 veteran at bats, and you got a lot of young guys. You have to learn to have better at bats consistently, and they fired a hitting coach last year because of the struggles they had, and you bring in a new hitting coach and you're having the same exact struggles that you struggled with all last season.
Yeah, and that's one thing where I say it's going to take some time for Chili Davis to kind of make an effect. It's hard to change the DNA of a player within a few months of working together. It just is. So I'm not going to draw much conclusions about that perspective yet. Though I will say this, I can't help but wonder, just because someone brought this up, and it's something I never thought about, and I don't know how accurate this is or not, but this kind of has to do with the whole BABIP issue that we've been seeing. And by that I mean is you're seeing a lot of opponents get on base against the Cubs, a lot of bloopers, a lot of seeing eye singles. It seems like it's a very high rate. Mainly I question, or not really question, just think it's going to even out. BABIP evens out. It happens a lot, so that just may be a thing right now. But you think about the coaching staff and you wonder if the absence of Dave Martinez is causing defensive alignments that are not necessarily the best, because not only are we seeing things fall in, we're seeing plays being misplayed in the outfield or on the infield, maybe because they weren't positioned in the greatest area, or they were just in a very awkward spot. Again, it could just be BABIP misfortune, or maybe there's kind of something off of the coaching and the alignment of the defense. I don't know, but it's something to think about. I don't know what you think about that, but like I said, I know it's early to judge a lot of the coaching because a lot of the coaches are new. It's hard to change the DNA, but it is something to think about.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. I can't pinpoint what it is with this team, because on paper they should be a much more talented team, and if you look at it as what they've done as a team, they've won a World Series and gone to 3 consecutive National League championship games, but they haven't felt, other than that World Series year, they haven't felt like a dominant team. I know personally the year before they won it, when they got beat out by the Mets, I didn't expect them to get past the Cardinals.
No, I didn't either.
And last year I was a little surprised they got past the Nationals. And I think it was more the Nationals faltering rather than the Cubs winning.
Oh, that game 5 especially, yeah.
So you just, although they've done really well, you just feel like there's a lot more room for improvement based on the talent that they have. What Jed Theo and Joe Madden have talked about, that, they expect Addison Russell to win an MVP. I would just be happy if he batted over 250.
Yeah. He's one I'm really kind of scratching my head on right now. I think that this year is going to make or break what he is. If he continues to do the same, then I think that's really what he is. He's had plenty of time to kind of grow into this. I mean, he hit 20 home runs in 2016. He drove in 90 runs in 2016. Was the average high? No. Was the on base high? No. But he was contributing to some production. I don't know really. I don't have his WRC plus numbers in front of me, but I would imagine that 2016, his WRC plus had to be the highest in his career. So yeah, we'll see what this year really brings. It's going to be very defining, I think.
I think so too. It makes you wonder if there was legitimacy to putting Addison Russell as part of a package to bring Manny Machado over, because that Manny Machado is a proven hitter. So
and fielder and pretty much everything.
Yeah. So, and maybe you secretly have questions about Addison Russell if you're the Cubs front office.
Yeah. Well, you know what I think the Cubs may be missing? John
Lackey. They're missing John Lackey.
I love talking about John Lackey on this show.
Oh, I know. Like, I really want to get a cowboy hat to put on, so when I feel more in the groove of being John Lackey, because I just see him right now with a wad of chewing tobacco in his mouth and a cowboy hat, watching baseball, going, I remember when I was better than all these people. Why aren't teams calling me?
I'm the rootinest, tootinest man around.
He's got 2 6-shooters and he's jumping in the air shooting them. Like, he's got like bandoliers on with bullets, and he's not just shooting it, but he's pumping his arm while he's shooting it. He's like, yeah, and he's got cut off jeans with cowboy boots.
He's got spurs on them.
Yeah, and he's got like a flannel pattern shirt that has no sleeves, and a cowboy hat, and probably a bolo tie with it for some reason.
Oh my God.
And definitely a giant belt buckle.
I feel like he's
like one of those belt buckles that if you try to do a sit up in it, it's gonna give you a cut on your stomach.
And he's always like adjusting it, and like, when he does that, he like spreads his legs and squats like a cowboy.
Yeah, it involves him moving the buckle, squatting, spreading his legs, and then grabbing his crotch.
And every time he does that, you can hear the spurs just clank as he does it.
Oh my God. You know what? For Halloween this year, I'm going as our version of John Lackey.
Oh my God. Yeah. You'll have to send me some pictures or something.
Our version of John Lackey is like the Onion's version of Joe Biden. It's going to take on a life of its own. I know it.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's so accurate. With all this John Lackey talk, I think I just need to go and watch some John Lackey highlights here, because just talking about him for a sec, because why not? Because we love John Lackey here. It's easy to forget that in 2016, for a lower, rotation guy, he was pretty dang good. He had a 3.35 ERA in 29 starts and 188.1 innings. He struck out 180. He was, for a 37-year-old yeehaw, he was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't ask for more than what he did, but it doesn't make him any less ridiculous as a person.
Oh, no, not at all. And he, really squatted down and took a Yankee panky on the ground in 2017 in the first half. 36 home runs given up. He was good in 2016, and he got the value from what he did because he had a career year in 2015 with the Cardinals. He was really good. Looking at Baseball Reference, it was the second most innings he's pitched in a season. Lowest ERA in a full season, 2.77. It wasn't the lowest fielding independent pitching, but it was still 3.57. That's pretty dang good. So he had pretty high value at an older age.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm still going to make fun of him.
Oh, I'm always going to make fun of him. It's going to be great. And, he has his 3 World Series rings and his all-star appearance and his money and all that other stuff, and he's fine.
And his young hot wife.
Yeah. And he's got little kids and
he's in his 30s and he's retired, or not retired. He's forced retirement.
Yeah. I still think the Cubs should bring him back as just like a umpire eater. You just release him from his cage.
Oh, like Tasmanian devil.
Pretty much.
I got a long memory.
That's all you hear from him is just he's always drunk when he shows up to the field, so it's just incoherent jabber when he talks and starts yelling.
Oh my god, it's too good.
Classic Lackey.
But I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to talk about.
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please make sure you subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. Share with your friends. Thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.